Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beyond the Big Six podcast. We've got a crazy weekend of Premier League football to talk about. I'm joined today by Niall Bromley and Tony. Are we both well? Good. Nod to the head.
Indeed.
Excellent. So if you enjoy this episode anyway, please leave a like on the episode and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy our content and you want to hear about the Premier League outside of that Big Six bubble. But we are going to start with one team from the Big Six, but we're mainly going to talk about the team that beat them. Sunderland defeated Chelsea 2-1, probably the biggest shock of the weekend, but there was a lot of surprise results going around. And the fact that Aston Villa beating Man City is pretty low down on the running order shows what sort of weekend it's been. But Niall, we'll start with you. Sunderland's win at Chelsea. Fair to say you didn't see that coming?
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw that coming. It was just a really, really good performance, a very good performance without the ball from Sunderland. They only had 32% possession, but I think they're still strangely dominated, even though they didn't have the ball. It was a strange one, but you can't knock them for what they did. They went there, they went for it as well. You know, they had a go. They wanted to attack Chelsea at times when they could. They defended in numbers. They got forward. The transitional play was fantastic. Gertruda, who obviously set up the goal, got his first start. A phenomenal performance for him, which shows again something that we've been saying for a while, that Sunderland seemingly have the strength and depth. And yeah, just an all-round fantastic day to be a Sunderland supporter. Now, I think it's too early to be getting carried away. I've heard a lot of things. I know Sky said that Everton were playing title chasing Sunderland in the next game. I think it's slightly too early for anything like that, but it's not too early to get excited about beating the world champions in their own backyard, which is what Sunderland have done. So a superb result, a shock, up to second in the league after I know they've dropped down. I think they're fourth now, but second in the league after that. It's just a crazy, crazy last 6 months Sunderland have had, and certainly the best that they've been in my lifetime. So I think it's a club that's on the up. It's a city that's on the up. It's a fantastic thing for Sunderland, and long may it continue.
Tony is the more neutral, would I say? You are neutral on this, but the more neutral voice on this. What do you think the ceiling is for the Sunderland team? And do you think they are, I don't want to say the real deal. The real deal suggests that they're going to finish in the top 5, I suppose. They probably, I would say, will not do that. But what do you think this team can actually achieve this season if the stars align as they are right now?
I don't see them in the European places, but they've certainly made a cracking start of the season. I know we've talked at great length about the signings that they've made, some really smart business. Now I mentioned a couple of players there. The finish from Talby for that second goal and the hold-up play from Bobby, really good. They're going to places where you wouldn't expect them to get results, and they are. So, mid-table or upper, maybe it's even top half. If they can keep it up, especially getting results against the big boys. They've certainly got it in them, and early doors, who could argue with how they've played? They've getting some really good results. They've had the odd wobble, but they've been able to bounce back from it. So I don't see why they can't look up, but I don't see European football on the horizon for Sunderland. I wouldn't get too carried away. And I know, like Niall said there, yeah, they were second earlier on there, but I don't really see Liverpool and Arsenal and the likes quaking in their boots with Sunderland knocking on the door just quite yet. Anyway,
No, I mean, I think every realistic Sunderland fan would agree with that. But Niall, next 2 games, Everton at home, Arsenal at home, and if they can come out of that unbeaten, if they can get a win against Everton at home, which after the show we saw from Everton this evening, as we record on Sunday evening, weren't great, and I think Sunderland will fancy their chances against them, and then you're potentially looking at first v second at the Stadium Light in a couple of weeks' time, which sounds pretty crazy to say. So at what point do you think we can begin to talk about Sunderland as being, dare I say, like safe? Can we start ignoring the relegation talk? Can we stop? I've got them included here at the start of this podcast because we're going to talk about Burnley beating Wolves. We're going to talk about Leeds beating West Ham. We're going to talk about, other teams in the bottom half of the table. But at what point do we need to stop including Sunderland in this conversation when we talk about teams fighting relegation?
Not yet. I think you've still got to include them because it's still very new to Sunderland. There's quality in that team, and they're showing it week in, week out. That they haven't been badly beaten by anybody. They've only suffered 2 defeats all season. They've played Chelsea away, Nottingham Forest away, tough places to go, and getting wins. I don't think you can write off relegation. I don't think you can write off relegation for a big chunk of the Premier League, to be honest with you. But not quite yet. If you look at Sunderland are getting the points on the board at the minute. Everton next game, I fancy Sunderland to beat anybody at the Stadium Light, and I think that's a fair thing to say now. I don't think there's one team in the league that wouldn't surprise us if Sunderland went. Don't get us wrong. I think that Arsenal game in 2 weeks, if I had to put a bet on it, I would certainly not bet on Sunderland to win the game. But I think Sunderland can take on anybody at the Stadium Light on that day. Away from home, after we've seen this weekend, you don't know. I think you're probably looking at the next 2 games. If it can get 4 points, if it can beat Everton and get a draw against Arsenal, then you're certainly going to start thinking that would put them on 21 points. You certainly, after 11 games, you would certainly have to start thinking, surely they're not going to be in that danger. But we've seen it with Hull. I know they didn't go down in the end. Hull had 20 points at this stage in the season and ended up staying up on the final day back in 2009. So it has happened before, but they've just got to keep on doing what they're doing. They've just got to keep level-headed, which is what they seemingly do when you listen to the player interviews, the likes of Wilson Isidore and Shamsin Talbi after the game. They said, just keep on doing what we're doing, and they don't fear anyone. And I think that's a massive factor for Sunderland. They don't fear anyone at all. So, you've still got to include them in that conversation, but at some point that might flip ridiculously into are they included into the fighting for European places conversation, but that's not for a good few weeks yet.
No, I'd agree with that. And funny enough, that whole team, look how disastrous they were for the rest of that season and obviously stayed up in the end. So that shows you how important it is to have a really good start of the season, because you can have then a bad run till the end of the season, but as long as you still pick up, Sunderland are 5 wins short, basically, of where they need to be come the end of the season. But anyway, let's talk about another newly promoted team. Burnley beat Wolves today in a proper ding-dong. A really, really good game. Burnley 2-0 up. Zian Fleming with an unbelievable goal to open. An absolutely just delightful. The crossfield ball, the finish, unbelievable. But Burnley 2-0 up. Wolves brought back a 2-2. Burnley then are pretty much sitting in playing for the point, find themselves a goal right at the death. Real kick in the teeth for Wolves. And we're going to talk about Wolves separately. I just want to focus on Burnley for right now. But this is another huge win at the bottom for a newly promoted team. And Burnley now 10 points. It feels like with the fixture they've already played Tottenham, Liverpool, Man City, and Man United already this season. So they've played hard games in their 9 so far. And they've got 10 points from the games where you'd expect them to pick up points. They've beaten Sunderland, they've drawn with Nottingham Forest, they've beaten Leeds, and then they've won today against Wolves. And if you want to say about the Premier League, you have to beat the teams in and around you. But Tony, what do you make of this win for Burnley? Because I think a lot of people are just writing them off. Everyone's talking about Sunderland, everyone's talking about Leeds in terms of the new promoted teams. But Burnley are just quietly going about their business. And this today was a significant win for them.
Yeah, massive win today. And like you've just mentioned there, Connor, if you haven't seen that goal from Fleming, you need to get it. It's the ball from Hartman, who I really like. I think he's a cracking player. The crossfield ball, and he just hits it first time, and it's a beautiful finish. So yeah, they're like you say, they're just quietly taking over, putting points on the board, and that's what you need to do. And I think the beauty of most of the all of the newly promoted sides were that they haven't really stuck to what they were in the Championship. They've kind of adapted to the Premier League and thought, actually, we're not going to be the dominant teams that we were. We accept that. You're not kind of looking at the league and going, oh, we're going to dominate the ball and we're going to do this. And I think most of the teams that have come up have done just that. They've kind of thought, well, we're going to stick to our principles and we're going to play how we did in the Championship. And that doesn't work because the levels just go up that bit further, and the style of play needs to change because the teams and the quality and all the rest of it is just that bit more difficult for those newly promoted sides. So hats off to the newly promoted sides for adapting to that. But yeah, I just wanted to mention Cullen as well. He looks like he's a cracking player, and there's a couple of passes that during that game that are just absolutely perfect. So yeah, well done to Burnley.
Yeah, gave away the penalty to be fair, Cullen, which I thought was a little bit harsh, like the sort of kick through on a clearance. But yeah, Burnley though, Niall, massive value for this one, and the fact that we're 2-0 up, it comes back at 2-2, and Wolves are piling on pressure. To be fair, without much avail, they didn't really, apart from when the game actually went to 3-2, they should have possibly scored, and Dubravka made an unbelievable save. But Wolves didn't really have an answer to breaking down this Burnley team, and that means Wolves have obviously now lost against all three new promoted teams. But for Burnley, I think going away from home in the Premier League and winning any game, especially when you're a newly promoted team, is significant. And I think I think we've been guilty on this podcast of writing off Burnley a little bit, just going, yeah, it's nice to beat Leeds, but fundamentally we still sort of see them going down. And I look at it today and I'm just wondering, well, why are we so quick to sort of write them off? Like, what is it? They are picking up wins against all the teams around them in the league. So why are we saying that they are pretty much dead certs to go down?
It's a really interesting question. I agree that, I'm happy to hold my hands up and say one of my biggest issues with Burnley is that I didn't think they had the quality. But I mean, today they had an XG of 1.43, but in the scored 3 goals. It was similar last week against Leeds. So they've obviously got quality because they're scoring goals out of nothing really, which is something that I think is a big plus to have in the Premier League, especially when you're a newly promoted side and you're not going to see much of the ball. So I kind of think, maybe me personally, I possibly have been a bit harsh on the fact that I didn't think they had the quality in the team, but they obviously have. What I will say about today was I felt like Burnley kind of ran out of steam. I know Burnley won it, but the last sort of 10, 15 minutes of that game, it only looked like it was going to be one winner. It didn't look like it was going to be Burnley. And I think against better opposition that they might get punished in them areas. But yeah, I still think that they'll go down, but I'm a lot more convinced that they've got a much better chance of staying up after these last 2 weeks. I think, you know what I mean? That back-to-back wins, huge wins, the games they had to win, and they've gone and won them. So that they have got a chance. They always say for newly promoted teams, if you get to the 10-game mark, you need at least 10 points to have any chance. They've done that. We're 9 games in, they have 10 points. They've done it. So they've got every chance of staying up. I still don't personally think they will, but it wouldn't surprise us if they did. And I think that, that, as you say, they're quietly going under the radar, but they're proving a lot of people, including me and you, wrong. So that's, it's a positive for them. And I know they'll be delighted tonight after that, scoring a 93rd or 94th minute win or whatever it was away from home. There's no better feeling. So they'll be chuffed to bits with it. They're winning their head-to-heads. Massive for them.
Wolves, Tony, I feel like we've ran this clip a million times when we talk about Wolves, but it felt like today was must win. It wasn't even must not lose. They've played Sunderland and Burnley back to back, newly promoted teams. They've come out of it with nothing. And not only that, they've had an absolute kick in the nuts with conceding that goal in the last minute of the day against Burnley. I'm not willing to, at this stage, 9 games into the season, especially with Wolves' record of having bad starts and then staying up, to just write them off. But I just can't see them finding 35-ish points from now at the end of the season to stay up. I don't know. Are they doomed?
I mean, when you've got 2 points on the board, it looks pretty bleak. And the fans are not happy. You know, there was scenes where Vitor Pereira was being dragged away from arguing with fans at the side of the pitch, Strand Larson amongst that as well. It's hard times at Wolves, really is, and you struggle to see where they're going to pick up points. You know, those newly promoted sides are teams that you have to beat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They're going to be your biggest rivals. You need to start and pick up points. You need to pick points up at home. They're not doing any of that, so it doesn't look good. They've I think they've kind of handcuffed themselves to Pereira as well with them signing a three-year deal. Yes, it's not a massive long-term contract, but there's still a lot of money that will have to come out of the coffers if they do decide to make a change. And then the question is, who do they go for? Who's out there? Who's a banker who you can have to keep them in the league? I mean, we've already seen, like, with the likes of Postecoglou going into Forest, that didn't really work out. But the likes of Dyche, he's gone to Forest there now. He got a good win midweek there, but they struggled there today. So yeah, there's a lot of questions around Wolves, but I don't think there's many answers, and that's the biggest problem for them.
I feel like, Niall, you unmuted yourself, so I thought you were gonna jump in straight after.
I was just gonna shout Big Sam down the microphone, but yeah, I think he's a West Brom supporter, so I don't think he would make that move. Well, you never know. It's been done before. True, but I mean, maybe he's the only one that can save them. I don't know.
It's an undesirable job, which is the problem. So, like, the Forest job and the West Ham job, when they came up, you had loads of time, and obviously you still have loads of time. But any manager who's taken that job, like, knows that they've got to basically pick up more than a point per game to stay up. Like, for me, they've had such a bad start that they're gonna. There's be managers that just look at it and go, "Impossible! I'm not taking it."
Yeah, you're talking the manager market of managers who have done well in the past, failed a few times, but really are wanting to get back into the game. Steven Gerrard, that sort of manager, that's kind of the category that they're going to have to look at. John Terry's been on all week saying how much he's desperate for a job. Maybe they'll turn to someone like that. I don't know, but they kind of take that kind of gamble. They're going to have to go for someone in that market. There's not many managers in it. It's going to be difficult unless they try and grab a manager from a championship team. But me and you had this discussion on the podcast last week, Connor. I can't think of any managers in the championship who I think are good, are capable of coming into the Premier League and making a difference. Not right now, anyway. So I just don't see who they turn to, unless they pull out another rabbit of the hat like they did last year and pull out another foreign manager who's going to come in at Pereira as a bit of a journeyman, maybe someone like that to come in and do a job and keep them. I don't know, but it's going to be very, very difficult for them. I looked at that team today as well, and I just think the manager needs to Strand Larson. I know he scored today; it was a penalty, but he's been terrible all season. I just think the Tolu Akadori, I think his name is, the lad, the god from Belgium, he looks an utter handful. And every time I've seen him, and you don't see him for very long, I think he came on for the last 6 minutes today, came on for the last 10 against Sunderland last week. I think when he played Newcastle, I know you were at that game, Anth, I'm sure he came up the last 15. And he looks like he can cause chaos. Why aren't they giving him a go? Wan Hee-chan, I know there's a lot of people unconvinced with Wan Hee-chan, but surely he's tried and tested. Arias, that brought him in from Brazil, he's not doing it. He's not producing anything. Why don't you just give your tried and tested players, just put them in? You have no other option. Put them in, put Wan Hee-chan back in, change it up, because what they're doing is not working. And, as Ant said, it got very sour after the game today. I look at it and I just think there needs change. It will be the manager. I know I say it's a bit strange because they did give him the contract. It was a massive gamble that, and it's not paid off. And I can't see him turning it around. I think it's a lot when you start arguing with supporters and stuff like that. Who comes back from that? It rarely happens. So we'll see. But like I say, he needs to stop playing these players who've done it in the Premier League because what he's got at the minute isn't working for him.
Well, from one disaster to another, Leeds beat West Ham, and we'll talk about Leeds in a minute, but we'll start with West Ham. And they were so bad in the opening the game was lost inside 20 minutes. They were so bad in that period. They did get better as the game wore on. And to be honest, when they got the game at 2-1, I thought maybe because Leeds have conceded so many late goals, maybe they could have, found a late leveler. But overall, nowhere near good enough. So many problems there behind the scenes. The supporters, Nuno just seems to be utterly clueless. He's making tactical decisions that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. He's got strikers on the bench he's not playing. Fulkrug feels like a Chris Wood type player, and he just isn't finding him on the pitch. Wilson at times, he brought him on after 25 minutes in this game, but Wilson he hasn't really given a lot of minutes to. It feels like West Ham are an absolute disaster right now, and I've wrote the question here in the plan is: are they as badly positioned as Wolves? Totally. Obviously, they've got double the amount of points, but it does feel like both West Ham and Wolves, because of the strength of the newly promoted teams this season, they just look almost dead and buried already.
Well, Fulkrug's injured again, isn't he? So he's out at the moment. And again, like you say, not playing Wilson, who's had his own injury troubles in the past, but is a proven Premier League goal scorer. It was a bit of a head scratcher. They're just defensively shocking. They really are, and it's set pieces all the time. And this season, we're seeing a lot more, long throws and the drilling of the set pieces. And it seems to be where a lot of the goals are coming from across the Premier League this year. So, you know, if you're going to concede as many as what they are, and like you say, the structure's just not there. And you kind of thought with Nuno coming in that they would have a bit more structure than what they did under Potter, but it just doesn't seem to be coming. It looks like a very badly sinking ship. Bowen coming out every week to kind of like shoulder the blame, or kind of say, yeah, things are going to start and click, but it just doesn't seem to be happening. The standout players who you need to be standing up just aren't, like bar Bowen, really aren't turning up. So it's desperate times, and like you mentioned there before, there's a lot of disruption going on in the background, board level, and the fans are in uproar with. So there's just a massive disconnect across the club. So yeah, it's a very, very there's a lot of similarities, like in the respect of the footballing side of things to Wolves. Um, yeah, hard times for West Ham fans as well.
And now let's talk about Leeds, because as bad as West Ham were, you have to give props to Leeds, because this was a massive game for them. They lost against Burnley last weekend, and it felt like that was a massive defeat for them, because I think people probably went there thinking that Leeds would pick up something from the game, but they put massive pressure on this match against West Ham. They start fast, they get 2 goals early on, they sort of see it through. I don't think they were great in the second half. I think they maybe sat in a little bit too much as the game goes on. I've got concerns about Leeds with that because they've conceded so many late goals already this season. But the fact of the matter is they've got 11 points from 9 games. They've done pretty well at home this season. They have picked up an away win as well. And you just look at them, and I would say that this is a Leeds and West Ham. You look at the two teams, and if you were going to bank on one to stay up, you'd have Leeds or West Ham from what we've seen so far this season.
100%. I think it's probably a case of job done for Leeds. It was a job that they needed to do, and they got it done. So it's huge for them. I was impressed. I thought they started very well, overloading the penalty area, putting pressure on West Ham, scoring the 2 goals, two good goals. I know West Ham won't say it that way, but for me, there were two good goals because it was just constant pressure. It was, goals a goal at the end of the day, and fair play to them. I thought that after that, I think that could have. I was sitting there expecting it to be go to 3s and 4s, the way West Ham just couldn't contain Leeds. But the game just got a bit strange. It was stoppy. It was like an NFL game. It was stoppy, starty all the way through that first half. And I just think Leeds struggled to gain that momentum back because it was injury after injury. And, there was 13 minutes added on in the first half, which shows how stoppy-starty the game was. So I think had it not been that kind of game, I think Leeds would have went on to score more, but they were just kind of, that opportunity was kind of taken away from them. And then I thought after that, they did quite well. I thought they defended really well. West Ham looked a lot better in the second half than what they did, but never really created standout chances, but they had to saw a lot of the ball. I did think the second half was fairly boring, but Leeds will be happy with that. And then when they conceded the goal, I was the same as you. I thought, oh, here we go again, conceding late goals. But they stood up to it, and they kept their heads, they defended it, and they got a massive 3 points. Now I know they'll be looking at it thinking it was an opportunity to get the goal difference up and stuff like that. But a win's a win, and it's a big win. So yeah, I was impressed. And same as like I said with Burnley, I still feel like Leeds need more firepower, which I think they'll probably get in January, depending on what the PSR is. But I think that I fancy them more now than what I did a few weeks ago. And I now think that Wolves and West Ham they're probably going to go down, which makes us think that either Leeds or Burnley are going to stop up. And if I had to pick one between Leeds or Burnley, it would be Leeds. So, maybe I'm wrong on that. We'll see. But I do think they need to strengthen in January, though.
Yeah, last, I suppose, point on the newly promoted 3, because we basically spent 30 minutes talking about the newly promoted teams, Tony. But where are we with them? Because as Niall said there, I look at Wolves and West Ham, and I'm like, there is no reason for me to believe that either of them are better than Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland. And I just think that they're both having so many issues on and off the field that they, for me right now, are the two favourites to go. I mean, the league table would tell you they're the two favourites to go down. But I think they're the two favourites to go down. And then even after that, because Burnley have picked up a win today and they're on 10 points, Leeds obviously on 11 points, Sunderland are on 17. You begin to look at the rest of the league. And obviously we're going to talk about Fulham, we're going to talk about Nottingham Forest. But I think teams are going to be looking over their shoulder who weren't expecting to be looking over their shoulder this season, because nobody expected all 3 newly promoted teams to be above a point per game at the 9-game stage of the season. It's unheard of in recent years for this to happen.
Yeah, I know the last time I was on the pod, I kind of pulled the face when you said Forest were going to get dragged into it, but that actually is becoming a real thing. And like you say, there's a lot of sides now who wouldn't have been in like a relegation conversation, or you wouldn't think would be, will nervously look over their shoulder and think that gap at the bottom, especially for the two we've already mentioned who are really struggling, is getting wider, and the gap between that mid-table group and those just like underneath that is getting smaller. So yeah, there's a lot of teams that could be dragged into the mix there. Like you mentioned, Fulham and Forest, and even potentially like Everton and things could be dragged into that mix. So yeah, there's a lot of there'll be a lot of clubs looking nervously over their shoulder, and the other club that we kind of did think would be there in Brentford is kind of proving a lot of people wrong as well, us included.
Yeah, I was just about to talk, so we'll move straight on to Brentford, because I think we have to say fair play to them. I can't remember if I had them in the bottom 3 at the start of the season, but I was definitely worried about them. I had them definitely in the bottom sort of 4 or 5, and they were fantastic again. They beat Liverpool at home, they've drawn with Chelsea at home, they've beaten Man United at home, They've beaten Villa at home as well. They look really competitive under Keith Andrews. They look drilled. Their set pieces are good. Obviously, their long throws we all know about are good. And I thought they did a really good job of just swatting Liverpool away in this game. I thought they were fantastic from start to the finish. Controversy with the penalty, was it in or outside the box? And I've watched it a few times and then it's inconclusive for me. I feel like you can't really tell if it's in or outside the box. But Niall, Brentford, massive win, beating Liverpool at home. You just have to say well done.
You have to say well done. It's a fantastic result for them. I think a lot of people thought that Liverpool would probably be back after the Champions League win midweek and the thumping that they handed out. But no, I mean, their struggles are still evident, and fair play to Brentford because they exploited all of their weaknesses. And it was just a really good game, wasn't it? It was a really exciting game from start to finish. And I feel like Brentford have been exciting since they got promoted to the Premier League. So, yeah, it's, just one of them where it was a really solid performance. I feel like the scoreline probably flatters Liverpool a little bit at 3-2. And arguably the two worst players on the pitch scored Liverpool's goals, Kirkes and Salah, for me anyway. And that's not including Konate, who, criminally slowed himself down when Sharda was still one-on-one, which I know we're not supposed to be talking about the big six, but that is one of the worst things I've seen. I don't know what he's doing there. If I'm kicking him out of the team. But anyway, back to Brentford. It's a fantastic result for them. Really is. I didn't see it coming. I still thought Liverpool would have too much for them. And they keep, as Ant says, they keep proving everybody wrong, and fair play to them for doing that. They look like they're a fairly solid side. I still think they're going to be in the conversation. I still think that they'll be more towards the bottom half than what they will the top half, but that's a huge result for them and they deserved it.
Yeah, I thought the Konate thing was weird because it was barely talked about on the commentary for the game, and I was like, he literally stopped running. Like, I don't understand that. Yeah, it was really bad. Yeah. I tell you what, Tony, what I like about Brentford is what I like about it's what I like about Leeds this season. It's what I like about Sunderland this season. It's what I like about Burnley this season. It's the fact that these teams do not care how they win games of football. There is no philosophy beyond how do we beat the opponent there and then? How do we win this game of football in front of us? And that is what these teams are doing. Like Sunderland went to Chelsea and they nullified Chelsea's good things and hit Chelsea where they were weak. They didn't let them play in the middle of the park. And Brentford did the same thing against Liverpool. They were like, oh, you don't like long throws. We're going to do long throws. You don't like us being up in your face. You don't like all these things, the counterattacks, the transitions. And they aren't bothered about the fact that Jamie Carragher doesn't like long throws. They're not bothered about the fact that, they're not playing out the back, nice tippy-tappy football. And this is, I think, a difference we're seeing in the Premier League this season is the fact that teams just are saying we're going to win the game of football.
Yeah, like I touched on before, having that identity of how you're playing, how it looks pretty, and you've played it out from the back and you're playing it in through midfield, and just lump the ball forward, get it in the box, get it near the goal, and something can happen, and teams are picking up on that, and that they're moving away from it, and it pleases me greatly to see Arnie Slot blow up because they didn't change to their side, and the ball's too long and all this. It's great, absolutely get in their face, make it difficult for them. That's what we need. We need these clubs to be rubbing all these big boys up the wrong way. That's exactly what we want to see. It makes for entertaining viewing. I'll never get sick of seeing Virgil van Dijk crying. So yeah, it's just brilliant. And yeah, like I mentioned there before, not having this ideal way of playing and just playing to what's in front of you is working for clubs, and that's what football should be about.
But you know what it is though, with Brentford doing it though, it's not like what it was when Stoke did it all those years ago and they got ridiculed for it. Like that was slightly a tough watch in a lot of ways. It's not like it's still exciting. There's still the transitions are so quick and it's still good to watch. And as Connor said, Sunderland did the same thing with the long throw-ins and who cares what these pundits thinking, who cares what
I mean,
Pep Guardiola changed football? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He
so
pretended to
just
change
just
football and
like you
people
were
followed him.
saying, sorry, just like you were saying there. I mean, Damsgaard wins the ball in midfield and puts that ball in for Shota, and it is absolutely magnificent ball.
Unbelievable.
It's tremendous. He arcs that ball perfectly, and Shota doesn't have to break stride. Canate, I don't know what the hell he's doing, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Damsgaard ball is absolutely sensational, and the confidence and, like, ability for him to just to take the ball through and place it into the net. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So not taken away from Brentford at all. They do have quality in there, and we did say that there is like that still a bit of quality there. Yeah, it was always going to be difficult losing Wissa and Mbomo, but they do still have that quality.
Yeah, and I think when you said before about Van Dijk crying, I think so. Sometimes I look at these big six teams, and they've always been the worst losers. They're terrible losers. We know that. But at the end, when who was it? Kelleher had the ball for too long, didn't he? For Brighton, for Brentford, he held the ball for too long. It was about 13 seconds. This, that, and the other. They're crowding the referee. Oh, we're being hot. He's singing the ball and all this, and you're just thinking, just get on with it, lads. Just get on with it. You've got your decision. You're getting beat. You need a goal. Just get on with it. And it's one of them. They're just, at the minute, things aren't going well for them when they're used to everything going well for them, and they don't like it. And long may it continue.
Let's talk about Aston Villa's win against Man City. And yeah, as I said at the start, the fact that this is slipping all the way towards the end of this just shows sort of how interesting the Premier League weekend's been. But they have picked up massively. It's like from that bad start. Obviously, they had that draw at Sunderland where Sunderland were out at 10 men, and everyone was worrying about Aston Villa, but they have just bounced back from that. This was a really significant win for them. They beat Man City 1-0 at home. Matty Cash with another goal as well. Do you think, Tony, that Villa are back to their old ways? Do you think we're going to see them pushing again to be in the top 5 this season?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody could have seen this coming, really. It was a matter of time before they just hit that stride. I know they're starting to give the likes of Sancho a run out in the side as well. So they're starting to get the best from their players, and Emery was always going to be able to do that. I know there was a worry about the staleness in the squad, but the class will always shine through. They've got a quality side, and it was a matter of time for me. I didn't really ever have massive concerns about Villa. Yeah, they had a bit of a rocky start. The draw Newcastle opening game of the season. It's still a good result, really. Yes, they haven't had the greatest of starts, but they're starting to hit their stride, and it's early days, and they're getting points on the board, and that's a massive win against City. Any result against City's, it's like gold dust. It doesn't come along very often. So to take those 3 points there, absolutely brilliant, and it kicks them on.
Yeah, not really much else to add there. Just a really good win for Villa. So we'll move on. We'll talk about Newcastle beating Fulham, Niall. And I suppose I'll ask you about Fulham. I think Tony, being the resident Newcastle fan, he probably should talk about them. So Fulham, are they in trouble? 4 defeats in a row. We talked about just before about the new promoted teams being strong and teams getting dragged into it. But Fulham just look, I don't know, off, stale. They just don't seem to have the same sort of. I feel like last season they were really exciting to watch. I thought Fulham were a decent team, solid mid-table. And this year they just seem to have lost that solidness, and they also don't look anywhere near as explosive in attack.
Yeah, big shout out, by the way, to the go-ahead Eagles of Deventer for beating Aston Villa last week. Shows how good Villa have been. Go-ahead Eagles, fantastic result. But yeah, Fulham, I don't know, they're a really strange one. I really don't think they'll go down. I think they've got the manager is far too good, and they've got experienced players. I watched the extended highlights of the Newcastle game in preparation for the podcast, and I thought Fulham weren't that bad. Anth might have a different opinion to me. He was obviously at the game, but I actually thought they looked pretty good. Although it didn't look like they were getting any joy breaking Newcastle down until they scored. I still didn't. I thought they defended pretty well. I'd say dogged is probably the best word. I think they seemingly were frustrating Newcastle. From I know I've only seen sort of 10, 15 minutes, but Newcastle looked frustrated from what I've seen. It looked like they were trying a lot of what they're good at. Newcastle and Fulham were snuffing it out. And I think to go to St James's Park and do that is a very hard thing to do. And they went and did it. Obviously, they've not been able to keep a hold of it. They ended up losing the game, so it means nothing now, which could be a problem for them. It's 4 defeats in a row, as you said. But I still think they'll pick up too much at home. I think they've still got enough quality in that team. But if I was a Fulham supporter, you probably will be worried because of what we've been saying this whole podcast. You know, the teams that people were expecting to be down there aren't down there, so you would be worried. But it's like I said, I still think they'll be okay, but might be a bit more nervy for them this season.
Yeah, 4 games coming up. Wickham in the Cup midweek. Then they've got Wolves at home, Everton away, and Sunderland at home. So it feels like they've got a chance there to rack up some wins. And if we are sat here on the 29th of November before they play Tottenham, and we are talking about a Fulham team that haven't won in that time, then I think we could begin to get concerned about them. Tony, though, Newcastle, felt like this was a really big win. I watched the midweek win against Benfica, and I thought that game, to me, never felt like it was in doubt. Benfica had a couple of chances, but I thought Newcastle played really well. And I caught glimpses of this game. I had this game on and the Sunderland game on, and I thought it always felt to me like Newcastle would find an edge. I always thought they would find a way to see off this game and get the win. And I just think that they were never obviously in trouble or anything, but I just think they needed that win just to feel better about themselves, because the start of the season, it's fair to say, it hasn't been amazing for Newcastle. They've picked up 3 wins against 3 of the bottom 4. You know, it's been a little bit underwhelming, and this felt like a really big win, you know, and it sort of sets them up now. They're on 12 points. They're 4 points away from Man United in 6th place, Man City in 5th place. It feels like Newcastle can really sort of bounce on from this and you know, get to their targets for the season, which I imagine is finishing in the top sort of 7.
Yeah, it was an important win. It was quite a scrappy game, to be honest. A lot of fouls, a lot of like the referee just didn't seem to want to get involved a lot of the time, and some of that was to like encourage the flow of the game. But there was an article in the Athletic there earlier this week about the foul charts, and Fulham are right at the top. And there was a lot of little niggly things during the game that weren't given, and you know, so it was quite a scrappy affair, really, and you know, we did need a win. You know, it was important that Newcastle were able to get over the line, and for Bruno to crop up at the back post there and be able to tuck that home was massive. You know, his post game interview, you know, he said he would have done 11 celebrations all over again if he could score a 90th minute winner. So yeah, we seem to be hitting our stride in the Champions League, and you know the league's kind of catching up slowly but surely. But hopefully this is the start of us kind of getting on the horse and starting to pick up those points.
Yeah, I did enjoy Bruno on Instagram using Sunderland's slogan, but till the end, which is how Sunderland's motto for the last sort of 6 months. So clearly Bruno has not been following Sunderland's Twitter page over the last sort of 6 months. Right, we'll talk. Obviously, we've got 3 teams that have lost. So Everton lost, Brighton lost, and Palace lost. Because we're running 45 minutes, I'm not going to talk about them. We'll come back next week and talk about them if needs be. But Bournemouth beating Nottingham Forest. That's the last game we're going to talk about. Niall, the Sean Dyche era in the Premier League off to a bad start. They were good in midweek. They beat FC Porto in the Europa League. Kind of thought this was going to be a hard game for Forest anyway. Playing in Europe and then going to Bournemouth. Bournemouth, such a good... We all love Bournemouth on this podcast, and they're such a good team. I want to talk about Junior Kripke as well, just because I've had him on Football Manager before and he turns into an absolute world beater. So to see him scoring goals, and he scored a worldie today, was very, very good to see. But yeah, for Forest, Niall, I don't think Forest are anywhere near in the trouble that Wolves and West Ham are. And I think Forest of them too, contrary to me having them in the bottom three in my 1 to 20 in the international break. You do think with Sean Dyche in there that they will find a way to pick up the required points. But yeah, not an ideal start, it's fair to say.
No, and it was a fantastic goal, but for me, it wasn't the best goal of that game. I mean, Marcus Tavernier scored direct from a corner, which you don't see very often. So yeah, that was fantastic to see. But yeah, I think it's a really tough one with Nottingham Forest, because I was the same as that the other week, thinking you are a madman saying that they could go down. I think you had them 18th. But I look, my issue is they can't sack Sean Dyche. They can't sack anyone else. And if they do, if he goes on another run, say they go for the next, they've got Europe as well, they go for the next 5 or 6 games and still don't win. Are they going to make another decision? Because, I mean, they've set the precedent for it now. So you kind of think, I don't know where they're going with it. I think Sean Dyche is a good enough manager. I think they will pick up the points to keep him in the job and then keep him for the relegation fight for the end of the season. I think they are in a relegation fight. I don't think they'll climb the table. I think they'll climb the table, but I don't think they'll hit the heights sort of top half, which is what I still thought they would do. So yeah, it's a really strange one. Like we've said before, with the teams that you're expecting to do badly doing well, somebody has to go down. Somebody has to go down, and who on earth is going to go down? I mean, like I say, we've said the other two, but who could be the third team? Could well be Forest, which is an insane thing to say. So, especially with the squad they've got, and beating FC Porto midweek, which is obviously a big result. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it works out. I think they've got Man United and Leeds next too, both at home as well. So
yeah, if we look at the fixtures, you've got Man United at home, then they play Sturm Graz away before playing Leeds at home, which is obviously going to be significant. 9th of November, just before the international break. Then they come back from international break. They're at Liverpool away. They play Malmo in the Europa League. Then they've got Brighton at home, Wolves away, Everton away. Then they play in Europe again. The Europe thing is what's killing Nottingham Forest, which is why when I did my 1 to 20 updated, I had them in the bottom 3. I do wish I'd put West Ham in there now instead. I think I had Burnley, Wolves, and Forest.
I think me and Ant had West Ham nearly mid-table, so I'm sure.
Yeah, I had West Ham 17th.
I think we had them 13th and 14th or something like that. So there you go.
Yeah,
how much you can change in 4 days.
We thought the Nuno effect, didn't we? Yeah, we both thought that.
I think that's why I had them out, because I was thinking the Nuno effect. You look at this is the thing we've been talking about. Somebody has to get relegated. So even though you look at Nuno and you go, should keep them up. You look at Dyche, you go, should keep them up. Wolves will make a change. Maybe they'll bring in a Sam Allardyce or something. And you go, oh, well, he's got a record to keep them up. But fundamentally, teams have to finish in the bottom 3 this season. And that's what I think this is so interesting, because we've obviously had just years now of the relegation battle just not existing. And this year, it feels like we're actually going to have something that's exciting and interesting and could go right down the wire. But anyway, before we wrap up, let's talk about Bournemouth, Tony. Obviously, I've talked about Kripke and his amazing goal. The first goal shouldn't have actually counted. I don't know if we saw this, but it was not a Bournemouth corner. It should have been a goal kick. It hit off, I think actually hit off Tavernier as it went out. So there you are. First goal probably should not have counted, but this is a big win for Bournemouth. I mean, Bournemouth just look good, don't they? I mean, we talked about earlier, we were talking about ceilings for clubs, and we were talking about Sunderland, what theirs is. What is Bournemouth? Are we talking about Bournemouth being a top 5 contender who get in the Champions League?
I don't see why not. Do you know what I mean? They're just a great side. Iriola's just working wonders down there. Like they must, they must be in dreamland, because after Eddie Howe left, I think there was a bit of a worrying scenario where Jason Tyndall took over for a little bit and things seemed to be a bit rocky. But since Iriola's came in and he did have a bit of a rocky start, he never seems to have looked back since then. And they're just such a well drilled, structured team. And Semenyo and Krupi, like you just mentioned there, that's just absolutely brilliant. And after getting rid of most of the back line last year, they just seem to have bounced back, and it doesn't seem to. If anything, they've improved. They don't seem worse off for it. They look great. So, you know, any team going down to Bournemouth who can get anything from that game, you're laughing because it's it's becoming one of the hardest places in the country to go, and on the road they're just as good. So the probably, I know we mentioned in a few other pods, they probably should have gotten something from Liverpool when they went to their place. So yeah, they're just a cracking side, and I can't see why Europe wouldn't be on the cards.
Yeah, 5 wins and 3 draws since they lost on the opening day. No defeats. Did exit the Carabao Cup, which they'll probably be disappointed with because they could have had a chance to potentially go far in that competition. But boys, unless we've got anything else to talk about, I think we've just about routed there. 52 minutes in. Niall, got anything to add?
We've got a
question.
tweet.
We did.
Yeah, we've got a question on Twitter. I don't know what it was, but
it was, are Forest doomed after the loss against Bournemouth today, or is Dyche the man to turn around the ship? So I think we'll answer the second part of that. Niall, is Dyche the man to turn around the ship at Nottingham Forest?
Yes. I don't think there's anybody else available that could be that person, and he was available and he could be that person. So quick answer for me is I think so, yes.
Tony, Dyche the man?
I'd have to agree with that. And Sean Dyche is known for, he's that emergency glass guy, isn't he? Smash in case of emergency where relegation's concerned, and he just drills his teams to play a solid defensive football. So yeah, I cannot look past him. I think he'll do a job for them.
Yeah, and then we just come back to the fact that 3 teams have to get relegated, and then you get yourself in a tizzy.
Just because you mentioned Football Manager there before, who are people managing on Football Manager? That's what I want to know. There's a question for put into the comments. Who are you managing on the new Football Manager? I've just started a save with Vitesse Arnhem over in the second division of Holland, and they're currently on minus 12 points. So I fancy myself a challenge. So who are you taking over?
Yeah, I mean, if I was to answer that, I would say that I've not really enjoyed the game, so I've not played it much, even though I've had it for a few days. But if I was, I want to do Carlisle. That is the save that I've got earmarked when the game comes out officially. They're obviously in the National League, and I think it could be fun to drive them back up the Football League. So there we go. And Niall, I don't think you're a player, right? So
no, but Dynamo Dresden would be the answer to every question.
Fair enough. What about Grimio?
No.
That shirt you're wearing? No, you wouldn't wear them.
Fair enough. 25,000 every week in the 3rd division in Germany. Sleeping giant, Dynamo Dresden.
Fair enough. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, guys. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you've made of the week. In fact, you know what? Give us your bottom 3s for relegation, because I just think it's really interesting to see what people think about that. Are Burnley still in there? We had some comments last week, some angry Burnley fans, because I don't think we were nice enough about them after the beat Leeds. So we've been pretty nice about Burnley this week. So hopefully they're going to watch and be thankful. Probably disappointed they're not leading the show, to be fair, but is what it is. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you all next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week, because we've got Sunderland playing on Monday Night Football against Everton.